Life is all about relationships. Lovers, family, body, or money. How satisfied you are can be completely explained by how you relate to things around you. This is Sophie Jaffe, and together with my husband, Dr. Adi Jaffe, we are here to explore and teach you how to maximize your relationships and achieve a happier life. Let's get ignited.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Ignited Podcast. I'm Adi Jaffe.
And I'm Sophie Jaffe.
And we're coming to you here the weekend. Is it the weekend? The week before our Seattle retreat. So by the time you guys all hear this, we will have walked somewhere like 30 to 40 couples through some pretty amazing stuff in Seattle.
Yep. So exciting.
Really, really exciting. We're looking forward to seeing everybody at Bala Yoga again. And for those of you who won't be there, who are not lucky enough to join us, just know that there's another opportunity coming up in LA to hang.
Yeah, we have just a ignited hangout. We'll probably do a live recording here in LA end of March. So check out our website, ignited.com, and go under the events section and feel free to DM us or email us with any questions. We are taking spots for that now. Yeah,
we're going to be at Sage in Venice.
Yeah. Right on Abbot Kinney. It's a great location, great place to grab dinner or lunch before, after. It's just a really fun vibe and a great LA spot to hit up. So it'll be a nice event with us, and we can't wait to meet you in the flesh and give you hugs. And
it's a little evening event thing,
connect.
Right? Like an early evening thing? Mm-hmm. Cool. Maybe we can even do a dinner thing.
Yeah.
We'll talk.
Let's do it.
We'll discuss off air. I wanted to read our review of the week. The review of the week from Emma 2075. That's probably not the year she was born. I'm wondering.
Impossible.
Yeah. Maybe she's negative.
Yeah.
50 something.
Maybe. Anything's possible. Time travel. I mean, honestly, this episode, Jana would be like, yeah.
Yeah. A little time traveler.
Uh-huh.
Emma the time traveler. Just on Thursday, left us this review. My favorite podcast. Thank you, Emma. 5 stars. Sophie and Adi are creating magic here. I discovered Ignited about a year ago, and it has changed the way I approach my relationships with my partner, daughter, and myself. That's awesome about the daughter. I've learned to address my own triggers and the underlying causes to what I am experiencing, and I have Ignited to thank for that. The openness and vulnerability that Adi and Sophie share with listeners makes this podcast really special, and they are out here changing lives with their honesty and truth. Thank you so much, Emma. We love hearing from you guys. Emma, I love hearing how this affected relationships. Now we got to tell you guys, we're going to get into our guest this week and talk a little bit about really expansion and different ways of looking at the world. I also get a lot of DMs and kind of the screenshots that I ask for all the time. Thank you for those of you who are doing that, because I love seeing those. But talking about how this idea of transparency and honesty plays out in your life. And I love that. We're going to start bringing you Tuesday episodes soon that will talk about career and leadership and work and how to bring that into that. And some of you share the pain, and I want to thank you for that, because I do have to admit that, transparency and honesty does not always feel super comfortable in the moment while you're experiencing it. That's why we actually love bringing this to you, because the payoff, as I think Sophie's kind of going to share here in a quote in a moment, sometimes through the pain is where you get the biggest growth. And transparency is absolutely one of the tools that we love using for that. And how would you describe this week's guest, Soph?
Jana Roemer is incredible. She's just the coolest, most inspiring, intelligent, balanced individuals. I think she's very grounded. She definitely knows a lot about the planets and astros and stars and the galaxy and all of that kind of more floaty, ethereal type of stuff. She's super knowledgeable about the moon, but she's also very science-based, and yoga nidra is actually just kind of like another way of describing what you've done with patients.
In what way?
What do you call it?
Like mindfulness?
No, where you...
Oh, biofeedback.
Biofeedback,
Got it.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
And so I think that she's just very balanced. You're going to love the way she shares about the moon and about astrology and how she shares it in a very approachable way. But I was looking at her website earlier, and I loved this part that she said in the About Me section. She said, I'm a rebellious provocateur. I speak things often left unsaid and have learned to be comfortable in discomfort. I love deeply and choose love over suffering and recognize that there are times when a bout of suffering is the only way to that joy.
Yeah, that's what I was saying at the beginning. Yeah. That's the pain leading to the reward.
Yeah. I think that's also like I've said for so long, I look almost forward to fights that we have now. Like it sounds crazy, but I look forward to having these moments with my best friends who are like sisters, my husband, with like certain family members, if they can play nicely and like really like, you know, make a real fight happen where we get to actually go there and say our piece and hear the other and then emerge on the other side. I look forward to that because it means that we'll be closer for it and we'll know each other better. And that's what I interpreted from what she was saying. It's just, you know, you have to suffer a little bit to get to the other side, which is joy. But I choose that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it, you know, might be even important for people to listen or hear. Sorry, not listen, but hear. Like we've been going through something for the last couple of days, and you know, I think it's always people ask me all the time, like, so do you guys still ever fight, or do you ever disagree? Because they hear this part, they hear the podcast, and you know, I don't know if they want to believe, or it's not like we fight on the air or anything like that.
I think
so
it's
they want to believe.
It's like highlight reel, right? Like even though we're very honest and vulnerable here, just like Instagram, just like any form of social media, any platform where you share, you're the listener and you're only getting what we're sharing. So if we don't burst out into a big fight on air, why would you assume that we fight otherwise?
Yeah.
I mean, you do, but it's like human nature to just assume that like what you see is what you get.
Yeah, totally.
But that's not the case. Not on anything. Like Instagram is a bunch of filtered, beautiful photos, and this is an edited, curated conversation.
Yeah.
And we are real honest. We go there for sure.
Yeah, and sometimes it takes, I feel like this one, last few days was some of the longest we've had in a long time. Like, it was like a whole 2-day, it wasn't a 2-day fight, but it was like a 2-day experience.
Yeah.
And
I think the difference though is that we can coexist now and be peaceful. So we can still handle matters about the home, and we can still handle matters about the family and the children and the day-to-day things now, where before it was like we would just isolate and not speak to each other.
Totally. And even I would say that even it wasn't, I guess maybe we had 30 minutes of the days or the 2 days were actually a fight. The rest of it was just like processing and trying to come to a place to talk about it, etc. But the nice thing is that I feel like still even in the middle of all of that, is that honesty and transparency. So I feel like that's what gets us out of it really fast.
It's also respect of the other and we want to get on the other side of joy.
Yeah.
We both want to have a really good relationship and be really intimate and close. We just don't always know how to get there. So we have to suffer a little bit on our way.
Yeah. And maybe the most important thing, and the thing I think that a lot of people, when they write to me about this, specifically ask, is unlike early in the relationship, there's not a fear, right? There was always this fear of like, what if this doesn't work out, or what if it ends, or what if this is the fight that breaks us up? And I don't know about.
I think we've just been through so many experiences that we know now that we can trust that we're in it for the long haul until like one of us falls out of love. And I think that's what we've always said is like, no matter what comes up, whatever we're presented with, whatever challenges or traumas or experiences present themselves, we're in it for the long haul. We'll get through those things. If one of us falls out of love, that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
And that's, again, out of respect. Like from a respectful place. Like, oh, I actually am not in love with you anymore. I've decided that I, moved on in this way.
I'm into animals now.
Yeah, I know. I was trying to think of something really
I
funny.
know you were like,
I was trying to think of something witty and funny, but I'm just too.
I'm
it's
into
too
aliens.
late. It's too late.
I'm gonna go to Mars and date over there.
It's gonna be like this British girl or guy or something. But
wait, there's a British girl or guy?
No, There was this hot Israeli girl in my Barry's boot camp class today. I meant to tell you, but I was
didn't even know
still
you went
mad
to
at
Barry's
you.
boot camp.
I know, I was still mad at you.
I know.
So I wasn't sharing fun bits of my day with you. You don't get to know that I went to Barry's or that there was a hot Israeli girl.
No,
You don't deserve that when we're fighting.
See, I tricked you.
Oh, now I revealed it.
The reason this even came up for me is because of that passage that you read, and but also even the concept of astrology and this kind of, like, we did human design just a couple of weeks ago, and then I'm sure on the flip side, some of the conversations that I bring to you and the discussions we end up having because they've been in my head forever. I remember early in our relationship, from other people, I never felt this myself, but from other people, I'm from like this science academic world, right? And in that world for decades and maybe like hundreds of years, that whole piece of the universe, astrology and that whole Eastern mystical, spiritual.
But is it? I mean, it's planets and that's very scientific.
Yeah, but not
interpreted.
Not the interpretation that it somehow has something to do with people's
the way
personalities.
We behave. Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of studies that specifically talk about how you put whatever you want into them. We talked about this when Jana Zoe was on, and I mentioned that I'm actually kind of okay with it, that we all have this relatively blank canvas with these little dots on it, and we get to put whatever we want into it. Mm-hmm. But I remember when we first started dating that, people in my sphere you would kind of look at it like, well, if she believes in that, then that must tell me a lot more about who she is as a person, mm-hmm. right? Because she's not this kind of like science-based.
Right. People love to put others in boxes.
All
What's
the time.
Your favorite thing?
And I assume, I don't know if it's true or not, but then on the other side, because I was always very like nerdy and sciencey and straightforward, from the other side, people are like, oh, he just doesn't see it. He doesn't see the mystical or the spiritual in it. Is that true ever?
I mean, I think there's a certain extent to truth for both of those things.
Yeah.
And I think that over time we've come together.
No, totally. So that's the cool thing about it is
that's why this podcast is so awesome, because we do come from those very different extreme places where I am very like ethereal and spiritual and believe in all of that, from astrology to crystals to energy to moving energy to, manifestation. Yeah. Like that is my realm.
And we can literally talk about like Noah and manifesting a little girl, and here's the irony, the beauty of it, right, is like we have friends of friends who are very, very kind of traditional Western OBs, and they would look and go like, that had nothing to do with it, right? They would just literally write off that piece.
Yeah, like it's just a 50-50 chance, and
you just got lucky on the girl, right? And then even in the spiritual world, you went to a medium who told you can have a boy, and you were like,
no, I'm not.
Nope.
Yeah.
And so even within that world, you fit the story into whatever fit your desire, needs, etc. And that's where the manifestation piece comes. And we will for sure do an episode on manifestation soon. We're holding off on giving the big news until there's really, really big news. But
no, we're totally manifesting a house right now. And when I say we, I mean me. Manifesting our dream house currently. I've been energetically spending a lot of time on it. I'm dreaming of it. And I'll share that whole process. It's pretty intense. It's even more intense than manifesting a girl, apparently, because there's a lot more moving parts and papers to sign. But
I don't know. I mean, you have to manifest over 5 years, so it's probably not more intense.
It feels
that
more
was
intense.
A lot of work. In the moment, is it?
It's more intense because that was like more delayed, and with her, it was more dreamlike, and it was more like pleasurable. This is like really intense and hard, and like I have to keep showing up to it and like imagining and having difficult conversations, but it's all going to work out, and I feel so good about it. And hopefully by the time this comes out next week, we will even be further along in this process, and I'll be sharing a little bit more about that.
We'll definitely have a manifestation episode soon.
My hope, I'm saying it right now on air, I want to have a spring equinox soiree at the new house it's a good backyard for it. Backyard. And we're going to have a spring equinox party.
All right. You heard it here first.
On that note, let's learn more about
On that note, we're going to go show
magic.
you astrology and the universe and the moon and expanding and all that beauty.
See you on the other side.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. This episode of the Ignited podcast is brought to you by Philosophy Superfoods. The Philosophy offers cleanses and other nutritional products that are unlike any of the other supplements and detoxification programs on the market. Why? Because they actually nourish the body with whole, live, nutrient-rich foods instead of depriving you and leaving you hungry. Have you ever tried a cleanse only to find out that you can't make it through a whole day because you're starving? Ever try a superfood shake that made you nauseous because it was so disgusting you'd rather not eat? The Philosophy fixed all that with a simple set of offerings that load up your body with nutrients while actually tasting good. Makes sense, right? Each of the Philosophy superfood and protein blends is vegan, raw, gluten-free, and has absolutely no filler ingredients. With over 15,000 satisfied customers, including some of the world's biggest celebrities like George Clooney, Gerard Butler, Lea Michele, and over 10 years of experience, this is the best stuff you can get. To buy some or find out more info, go to our website, thephilosophy.com. Okay, so we're in the interview portion, and I am so excited. This is the first time that I've actually done a full interview all by myself. I feel like such a big girl right now.
Wow.
Hopefully it's recording. Hopefully I didn't mess anything up. But I have the beautiful Jana Roemer, and I have admired you for so long. And when you were even living in Canada, when did you move to LA?
5 years ago now.
So 5 years. So more than 5 years, people have been saying, you got to meet this girl. You got to meet this girl. You would vibe so well with this person. Myra, so many people, just signs from the universe. And I totally get it now. Now I want all I can get of you. I'm going to let you in.
With me too, though. I mean, I heard of you before I moved down here as well. And I have to say one thing about meeting you in person is that it's so refreshing to see that what you see online is really what you get in life. And I know that that's not always true. So thank you for keeping it the same.
Consistent.
Yeah, consistency. So
yeah, and that was before the world of social media. I mean, you can hear of people through Instagram, but like real human beings were telling me, you gotta meet this human.
Yeah, totally.
So today what we're going to do, I'm going to let you give yourself a little intro and share with our listeners what you do on a day-to-day basis and what you're offering to the world. But we're going to really try and demystify the moon, astrology, any of these kind of concepts that you have heard me vaguely speak about, and just kind of dig in this next hour, things that have come up for both of us in our communities, and just share with you in a very, basic sense, but also thorough in its own right. So I'm going to let you intro yourself and share with our listeners who you are.
Okay. Well, my name's Jana Roemer, like Sophie said. I grew up on an acreage outside of a small town in the middle of Canada, in Saskatchewan. The town literally was 150 people with 2 streets shaped like a cross. And I was a good 10-minute bike ride outside of that little tiny hub of humans.
Wow.
And so the reason I say that is I grew up staring at the stars and watching the moon. And it was, in some ways we grew up in isolation, especially if you compare it to the city. Although we had family and there was friends and there was a community as compared to life in LA.
I was just thinking that. I saw that parallel, like saw you there on the map, and thinking of where you are now energetically.
Yeah.
Whoa.
It's so completely different. And so the stars and the moon were true companions. I remember learning, and I wish I could still remember, but I knew all the constellations, maybe not all of them, but a good chunk of constellations. And before a concept of full moon or new moon, I was observing these phases of the moon and how the moon would disappear some nights and the moon would be there some nights. And, and then when I was in high school and there was all bush parties, we would do them on the full moons because there was more light.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
totally.
This relationship, although it's been variable over the years, it's been there. And then when the internet started, because we're old enough.
We're old enough. Dial up.
Yeah. The first thing I purchased on the internet was a natal chart reading. And I did it all secretly because I thought people would think I was weird. And I was afraid of being judged.
Yeah.
Because it was,
Because it's high school.
Yeah. I mean, the internet started just after I finished high school. So
we're young and we're, especially when we're young.
I was still in my teens.
You're vulnerable.
And yeah. But I was always really interested, and I just didn't imagine, I never imagined that it would be something that I could earn a living off of, or that anybody else would really be that interested in. And I remember meeting this one girlfriend. I was working in Calgary, Alberta, and we were working at a lounge, and she knew every birthday and what it meant. Have you ever seen that birthday book?
Oh, wow.
And so I told her my birthday, October 17th. She's like, oh, that's the day of precarious balance. And I was like, how do you know that?
Wow.
And I realized she had this superpower. And we went through the restaurant, and she was just like, that person, that person, that person. She like knew all the things, and it was accurate,
Wow.
And
it's so fascinating. The first time that you see it and you see that it works.
Yeah.
That's where the power is. Like, it's one thing to like open a magazine and resonate with some vague explanation of what you are probably feeling if you're a Virgo today. But it's another thing to dig a little deeper. And that's what I'm hoping this little session, this little 1 hour talk that we have today can really help people to understand the power of really digging into your astrology, your own personal astrology and its connection.
Yeah, well, the horoscopes that we see in the newspaper, that only started in the 60s. Funny. That's not where astrology began. If we go, I'll briefly back to the history of it. Astronomy and astrology were tied. They were the same thing. And this is before the Industrial Revolution, where people believed in magic and they believed in alchemy was real, and shamans and medicine women and men were the healers. And astrology was a legit thing that people use, not only for when to plant their crops and when to harvest, but also royalty and governments would use it for when to vote, when to go to war, when to bring different political things out to the people. And it was of the highest class to be in tune with the astrology.
So beautiful.
Yeah. And then when they started to divide science and mystic, and these became two separate things instead of a merged one thing, then astronomy became scientific and astrology became woo-woo.
Woo-woo.
And it kind of got dumped. And in the 60s, they came up with this idea of horoscopes. So it's pretty new that you would open the newspaper, open your Cosmo magazine and say, what's up for Virgos? Or
exactly.
What's up for Libra? That's somewhat new.
Yeah. And just so if you're listening to this and you have no idea what we're talking about, what you read in those magazines is just for your sun sign.
Right.
So it's just where the sun was when you were born.
Yeah.
And it's just one small sliver of who you are.
Yeah, because there's 9 planets, and well, if you get into asteroids, there's way more. And so you are a matrix. You are a matrix of things. It might be beneficial to just briefly talk about a bigger picture of what we're even doing.
Yeah.
So we can recognize that if somebody is raised in Mexico, they would have a particular social culture about them. If somebody was raised in Canada, there's a culture, or the US, there's a culture, or Australia, there's a culture, or Africa. I mean, there's so many different cultures depending on where you are. But we understand that and we accept it because we experience it and we see it and it's obvious. But we don't necessarily recommend or recognize that if you're born when the sun is aligned with a particular constellation in the sky, you then have a kind of a culture to you, or there's like an archetype that's more alive in you. And there are 12 constellations in the sky that we know as, we've said Virgo and Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn. All of the zodiac signs are actually constellations that you see in the sky.
So gnarly.
And so when the sun is in alignment with this constellation at the moment of your birth, then you have qualities of
an
that.
imprint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so but we're not like walking around with our signs on our chest or our moons or,
Yeah.
And then the other thing that becomes relevant is that we know that the moon is pulling the oceans. That's what the tides are. It's super obvious. And we're 70-ish% water. And so we would be ignorant to think that the moons weren't affecting us in some way.
Sure.
And then if we look at your endocrine system, our circadian rhythm is governed by light or dark. And until we created light, like a light bulb, when the sun would come up, we would start to get dosed with serotonin. And when the sun goes down, we start to get dosed with melatonin. And so the sun it was like one of the main consistent governors of our whole endocrine system, because that comes out of your pineal gland.
Yeah.
And so really, like the advent of a light bulb is the first endocrine system disruptor. Isn't that crazy?
It's crazy. It's so true.
Mm-hmm. And then when you get into the more subtle nature of each of the planets, Mercury is governing the mind, and Venus is governing love and prosperity. And it's influencing on a more subtle way, but a similar way to how the sun, the light and the dark, is affecting our endocrine system, and the moon is governing our inner waters or influencing our inner waters.
Emotions.
Yes. And so if we look at the solar system, like here's the sun. Oh, you can't see me out there. I just made a fist with my hand to show the sun.
Yeah.
And then around the sun, we have the planets orbiting. So we're the third rock from the sun, and it goes around in a circle-ish. It's a little bit imperfect. And each of the planets are going at their own speed in their own way around the sun. And there's a magnetic field to the sun that keeps all these planets in orbit. And I think we can all agree with that. Mm-hmm. And then each of the planets has its own electromagnetic field, which is, we can talk about it as gravity. So Earth's gravity is perfect for human existence. But the moon has its own gravity, which influences ours. And then all the other planets have their own gravity. And so depending on where the planets are in relationship to us in the solar system, it's going to affect the electromagnetic field of the Earth in any given moment. Because it's this beautiful, magical balance of gravity.
Yeah.
All these different gravities that's holding us in orbit. And I mean, that alone as a concept it's
insane.
Kind of radical.
The solar system itself is just
to wrap your head around.
Mind-blowing.
Yes. And so when we're in our mother's womb, we are in saline sack, like in salt water in essence. And so we're floating like a float tank. You're not subject to gravity while you're in this little floaty womb.
Cocoon.
Yeah. And the moment that you're born, you experience gravity for the first time. And so the waters of your body, your nervous system, your endocrine system gets imprinted with the electromagnetic field of the Earth at the moment that you're born, your first ever experience with gravity. And when you look at, you've got sweet little Noah, and you're just watching, one of the first things she's figuring out is this relationship with gravity. She's stuck. And she's like, oh, but if I lift my arms and lift my legs, and then that starts to develop muscles. And, it's one of the first things that we have to figure out.
She's 5 months old and she's still just not really sure how to grab at that ball or grab, it's still...
Yeah.
Trying to grab my face and kind of missing and it's just so amazing to watch the development, because it is slow if you look at the first 6 months.
Yeah.
And it is, it is her new relationship to this planet Earth. And she looks a little alien-esque when she comes out. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Otherworldly when they're first born.
Yeah.
If you look at a newborn, they look.
Oh, they're aliens.
They're aliens.
They're either like grandparents or aliens. Yeah. We digress.
They've lived another life for sure.
Yeah. So when they're born and they experience gravity for the first time, they get imprinted with the electromagnetic field of the Earth. And that's what a natal chart actually is it's the placement of the planets in relation to that moment. That's why the birth time is so vital. So important. And we look at the three luminaries primarily. You already mentioned the sun sign, so where the sun was at the moment of your birth. And then the moon takes 28-ish days, we'll say it for ease, but 28-ish days to go around the whole zodiac. So it spends 2.5-ish days in each constellation, and each constellation represents an archetype. And so that 28-day-ish cycle, wherever it is in that cycle is your moon sign. And so again, timing is important, but the most important thing for timing is actually your rising sign. Because in the natal chart, the rising sign is defined by which constellation is rising on the eastern horizon at the moment of your birth.
Insane.
And each constellation takes about 2 hours to
So if you're
rise.
off by an hour, you could be completely throwing your chart off.
Well, even 10 minutes if it's like
True.
right in
On the
between the
cut,
two.
yeah.
Yeah. And then that determines like what, I mean, can we put a picture in the show notes or no?
Sure.
Yeah. We'll put a picture of an example chart. So it looks like a pie graph afterwards. And so that specificity comes with the time. So I try and tell people within 15 minutes if possible.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as long as you know where the location of where you were born,
Yep.
the time,
Yep.
and the day, then you can have this information.
Yep. Without the time, you can get the sun and the moon and you can know where all your planets are, but you can't know the house. And maybe we should save that for another conversation because it's way bigger. You can still get a lot of information. There's just not the same depth that you can get with the time.
Absolutely.
And your moon is your history. It's your past. It's your emotional body. It's what you keep close to yourself. It's like what you don't want people to see. And then your sun is how you shine into the world. And it is, although the rest of the chart is alters the information in huge ways, the sun is the ego and the identity, you know? And then the rising sign is what you are rising into in this life. And oftentimes other people will see you as your rising sign because they see you as your potential. We see ourselves as our shadow and other people see us as our potential. So we'll see ourselves as our moon and other people will see us as our rising.
What's your moon and sun?
Oh my
and
goodness.
rising?
Okay, I am a Libra sun and then double Virgo.
Ah.
Yeah, but I actually have 5 planets in Virgo and my rising. So I am like the Virgo-iest of the Virgos.
And Adi is the Libra-ist of the Virgo. He has sun in Virgo.
Yeah.
But then almost everything else I think we decided was in Libra.
I think so, yeah.
That's funny. Yeah. I'm a Taurus moon, Taurus sun, and Virgo rising. We're all very earthy.
Yeah,
the three of us.
really earthy.
Yeah.
Venusian and earthy because Venus rules both Taurus and Libra.
Okay.
Yeah.
Love.
Yeah. And then Virgo is ruled by Mercury. So that's very mind, lots of intellect. There's lots of intellect.
A lot of intellect
but like
happening.
Really loving intellect. We want to help people.
Yes, exactly. Serve.
Yeah, we're here to serve. We're here to serve.
So when demystifying these kind of, I already think that this is such a great lead in. And I mean, up to this point, it's all very scientific or
just placements of planets in the actual solar system.
Yeah, when you were born on the planet.
Yeah.
So going from here, what would a person do now to find this? Could they enter this into like the internet and
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's really easy. There's 2. I really love astro.com.
Okay.
And you can get if you have the information that you said, birth date, time, and location, you can enter it in there and you can get the picture. Now, the chart itself is a whole nother language. So getting help decoding it is really important. And, you can start searching through the Google machine to find stuff. But sometimes that's not totally accurate because you can't look at one thing in isolation. Somebody who understands the matrix of the chart because it's multidimensional. There's layers upon, yes. Yeah, is really helpful.
Yeah.
But the good news, or one of the best things about if you can find your own chart is that, so many astrologers that have been writing astrology for a long time, like Chani Nichols, I love her. She'll say, well, this is affecting, if whatever house you have Capricorn in, this is going to affect that. And people, I get like, my inbox gets blown up. Like, what does it mean when I have Capricorn in what house? So by having an opportunity to at least look at your own chart and start to understand the basic language of it is helpful.
Yeah.
So you can see, because the houses are essentially what area of your life is being affected.
Has there ever been a time when you've got someone's chart that maybe is someone really close to you and it just felt totally off?
Okay, first of all, I have a really hard time reading people close to me.
Okay.
Because my bias is so prevalent, I have an easier time reading strangers because I'm just reading a language. I have no attachment. I don't know who they are. I try my best not to offend anybody.
Yeah.
But
Totally.
it's like, it's non-personal where, I mean, my husband's chart, he's always like, how come you never tell me about mine? And I'm like, I can't read it.
Too much.
Can't read it.
It's too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I do remember, I don't know, I hope Kaylee's okay with me saying this, but I do remember looking at her chart and thinking that it was a little bit off. And we started talking about a couple of things and she agreed that it was a little bit off. And she went and got the birth records from where she was born. And turns out her birth time was off by 4.5 hours.
Oh, okay.
So
that makes
it did
sense.
make a significant difference once we had the right birth time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and so again, these traits of one's astrology or these constellations are based off a shape that someone saw in the sky. So for a Taurus, for example, the qualities of a Taurus are based off this picture in the sky, right? Or where did the qualities come from?
Okay, this is a way huge conversation.
Okay.
But if we look at the zodiac and starting at Aries, and then as you go around, Aries would be March to April, right?
Yeah.
And then Taurus would be April into May, and then Gemini and so on. And then it goes all the way around to Pisces. And when you look at it from Aries being the beginning, that's the astrological new year. It's actually spring equinox.
Okay.
And when you look at it from the perspective of a life cycle, so Aries being the baby, and then you go all the way around and Pisces is the elder, they have very specific traits in each one, and then they each have an element to them, and then there's 3 modes to the element. So it's either earth, water, fire, or air. And then there's 12 signs, so there's 3 earth and 3 water and 3 air, but there's also 3 modes. So one of the mode would be like Aries is the fire sign that initiates. So it's a cardinal, it initiates. It's like fresh new energy, new beginnings. And you see all the cardinal signs at the beginning of the season. So the equinoxes and the solstices are the cardinal signs. And then in the middle of the season, we have the fixed signs. And fixed signs are where we really get to know the mode from like staying present. Taurus, okay, you're a Taurus, you're the first fixed sign in the zodiac, which is earth.
Yeah.
And look at Taurus's reputation from like a really, I think it's kind of a weak perspective, to be honest, but it's like stubborn and bullish.
Right.
But there's so much more depth because Taurus is each archetype governs an area of the body. So Taurus governs the 5 senses. And so they're very sensual. Taurus is very sensual. And each sign has a planet that rules it. And so Venus rules Taurus. And so this is where the matrix starts to
deepen.
Yeah. To see all the different things. And they have a color and a flower and an animal and, all the different things.
Yeah.
And then the final mode is called immutable. So immutable is when it's changing. And so the mutable elements and signs are the ones right before a season changes. So Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces, because they're getting ready. So now in a mutable element, it's looking at what did it learn from this season and how can you now alchemize this, grow yourself, and change and get ready for the next initiation.
So did some of the stubborn tendencies come from the fact that it's fixed?
Well, yes, fixed, exactly. But Scorpio, for example, is a fixed water sign. Okay. And lots of times people don't recognize that it's a fixed water sign because Scorpio is the ultimate transformer. Like there is no bigger phase of transformation in the zodiac as Scorpio season. That's why, it's kind of a hard time.
Yeah, it's been really hard.
Yeah, and you know what? The U.S. presidential elections always happen in Scorpio season.
Wow.
It's so nuts.
Wow.
But I look at that like the water, for us to understand transformation, look at water and how many different forms water takes and how different of effect each of those forms take.
Yeah.
So
it's not just like look at water as an element, oh, it's fluid. Well, no, there's lots of different...
It's vapor, it boils, it turns to ice, it churns like the tide or a rip tide, and you just have to surrender and let it take you, and then it delivers you back to the shore when you actually learn to surrender. And You know, there's so many different ways that water can teach you. It can be incredibly healing. You know, we can cook with it. Water is alchemy in action. You know, you put noodles in a pot and you boil them, and then what comes out at the end is a completely
Edible.
non-edible to edible.
Yeah.
So part of the reason why Scorpio becomes such a potent time for transformation is that we actually have to sit in the water and we have to see all the different forms. Where Taurus is fixed earth, like it's not moving. But what Taurus fixed earth will help you manifest. You know, you guys are Tauruses, they are legit the most powerful manifestors. Unless, I mean, there's always things in a chart that will sometimes decrease the potency of one archetype or another.
Yeah.
So that's
I've
why
been
the
a
whole
manifestor since I was little.
Yeah,
Just
obviously.
like little magic wand. It's crazy. When I realized it, I was like, whoa, this is dope. You know, like young, and I didn't know what to call it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really wild.
And Taurus also likes the material world. So there's sometimes collectors. Like Taurus will have, my husband's a Taurus, he has a big record collection.
Yeah.
And that has a
I feel like
lot
I'm
of,
the opposite because my mom was like kind of like that. So I kind of picked the opposite, but I'm sure if I actually let myself, I love collecting like nature. Like I love collecting, I go on walks and I come back with like handfuls of stuff.
Yeah.
Like I just like to that tendency of like, I want beautiful things. Like I collect, I need like lots of flowers. Like I've been dying this week because I don't have any flowers here and I like want them in every.
Right. Okay.
So, yeah,
See, there you go.
So it's there.
See, but, and then that's also earth. You're like, oh, I need the earth element in my house to feel really
Constantly. Like there has to be a candle burning or flowers or something, or I feel off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Leo is a fixed fire sign. And you know who's a triple Leo is Kai Pacha.
Oh, wow.
You know Kai Pacha?
Yeah.
He has the Pele report.
Yeah.
It's so great. He's a triple Leo.
I mean, I don't know we didn't actually get to Leo's chart, my Leo,
right.
but
Yeah.
Leo's a Leo and like full on Leo.
And they're change makers.
He's a performer. He's a change maker.
Yes.
He's like in it.
Yes. He's a leader. Yeah. And it's ruled by the sun. And so all eyes just naturally gravitate towards
no one
them.
can help it.
Yeah.
They're like, look at that kid.
Yeah. And then Aquarius is the fixed earth. Or sorry, pardon me. Aquarius is the fixed air. And they're the humanitarians.
Yeah.
You know, they have this wisdom that is beyond. And they, I mean, as a fixed air, it's not that they don't have emotions. People sometimes criticize, like, you're just not with me in my emotional experience. It's they experience the emotion, but they actually experience it quite quickly because that fixed air it just lets it move quite quickly, and they take it to the highest, to the wisdom, and it's like they see the world from 40,000 feet constantly, and they see it from 40,000 feet, and they know how to organize everything so that everybody's taken care of, so that they can restore the peace. I mean, obviously, I'm looking at like the light side of
course, and from just a higher vibration,
high perspective.
Like high perspective. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's so much.
Yeah.
And then you also will they have to join your newsletter in order to get a private session, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I do readings if people want to do one. They can get it from the only way is if you're on my newsletter, I put a link in there to book readings, and I only book a month in advance because in my experience of trying to get readings, people book like a year in advance. I'm like, no, I want a reading now.
Yeah.
And so I just decided we're only going to do it once a month. The link goes out once a month and you can book. And they, for the most part, they sell out every month. There's maybe like one or two spots that don't.
And I mean, also I'd say, explore your local area in terms of like getting word of mouth, like ask someone who is someone you trust in your community and just ask, like, do you have someone that does really great readings? Because it's,
Well, the one thing that I often say to people is that if you approached learning about astrology similar to how you would approach learning to play a guitar, if you learn to play a song, do you really know how to play a guitar?
Right.
No, you know how to play a song. If you approach astrology, but then if you learn the scales of the guitar and the chords and all the notes, like all of that, then you can piece together different songs by ear.
Right.
And so if you're trying to learn astrology, start to first learn the archetypes, which is so easy to learn because there's so much information about the archetypes. And by archetypes, I mean Aquarius or Pisces or
the traits.
Aries. Yeah. And so you learn the different archetypes, And then you can learn the planets. Each of the planets, I like to call them personalities. So if Sagittarius, I call the Sagittarius, or not, sorry, Saturn, the personality of Saturn, I think of it as like kind of a grumpy, older, masculine, authoritarian, figure in your life that really loves you and really wants you to grow up and really wants you to do the best.
Yeah.
But they're not always the best at communicating how you can step it up.
Yeah.
You know? And if we look at all of the different planets and get to know their personalities, then when they start to come together, they are in dialogue. In dialogue, we're doing math and geometry in astrology. You're looking at the degree and the angle that the planets are from each other. Right angles are squares, opposition, so straight directly across is an opposition. And then there's trines and a few different ones. And so they're all just different angles that they're at. And depending on the angle of one planet from the other, they'll be in a different kind of conversation. It'll either be like a harmonious energy flow or it'll be a tense energy flow. And let's say we had Venus, whose personality is more loving and sweet and
feminine.
Feminine, and wants to restore peace in the world and wants everybody to be prosperous and understand love and beauty and, you know, and so you think of her more like, I don't know, maybe like a fairy godmother that just comes in and is like, hey, can I help you? How can I help you?
What can I do?
Let's make this nicer. Let's clean up the house a little
And then
if those two are in a conversation, so that's the square or the trine. If they're in a conversation, if you think of this, the father figure in the house is going to have a different conversation with just the mother figure in the house than he would have if the mother figure is not there, but the child is in the house. And there's going to be a different conversation that happens. So the way that the different planets are in dialogue with each other will show a different side of each of the planets, just like our personalities, a different part of our personality comes out depending on who's in the room or who's in the conversation.
So interesting.
Right?
The thing that I love about astrology, and when I got my first reading like 10 years ago, and I felt A, understood, but B, I felt like it was just a new way of looking at myself and a new understanding and awareness of me. Yeah. So this doesn't mean that this is set in stone and who you are and there's no moving. And it's actually quite the opposite. It's that you have this information, you receive this knowledge about who you are, and then you get to run with it. Then you get to be like, oh, for example, I'm a Taurus. Okay, that could be stubborn, bull-like tendencies. Well, that doesn't mean that's how I have to respond and show up in everything. Or, you know, what's the planet that's all about confrontation and like communication?
Well, those are two different. So Mars would be more confrontation and Mercury would be more communication.
So say the way that I communicate is Aries, which is something that came up in my chart at one point. That's fire. So when I go to have a confrontation or a conversation with someone, I need to be aware that because it's an Aries, I can come off as, even though it's just, to me, it's passionate and compassionate, the person receives it as more fiery and therefore might like kind of retract a little bit or feel combative or something like that. So I just need
intimidated.
Or intimidated. And so I need to be aware of that intensity and back off a little bit and come with a more loving Venus-like energy, right?
Yeah.
Like, so to me, it's like knowledge is power always.
Yeah.
But especially with yourself, especially with the world around you. And if you can start to navigate, oh, this is the way that I show up to other people and to myself and for myself, you can change things. You can show up differently.
Yeah. If we recognize as above, so below, and that the stars are mapped to the collective unconscious, then where the stars were at the moment of your birth, it becomes like the moment of your birth, the electromagnetic field gets planted into your body through your chakras, through your endocrine system, and this becomes the first condition that you receive. And so if we look at like nurture versus nature you're going to get from your parents, and nature, this is your first nature.
Yep.
This will be one of your first conditions that you have to, or you don't have to overcome anything, but recognize and become aware of these influences that are so deep in the subconscious mind and in the psyche. Yeah. And so the benefit, exactly what you're saying, the benefit of this is what I love within communities. If people know each other's charts, I've done quite a few families actually where we sit down over dinner and I'll just pull up all of their charts one by one and go through them and then start to talk about family dynamics. Like, oh, well, you're never going to get the story out of her. She's a Scorpio. She's the mystery. She doesn't want to know. And this person's always going to lead the way. And if you guys, understand our strengths, but then also you can keep each other in check. It's really amazing. And actually for myself now, every time I look at doing a collaboration, I ask for the chart. And sometimes it makes me recognize right away we're not going to communicate well or our emotional experience is so different because our neurodiversity is shown in the chart. So somebody who's highly emotional, somebody who's highly intellectual, someone who's like sensual, like somatic, more in the body, it's all shown in the chart. It's there.
Imagine if we could, when we started to get into like a deep friendship with someone, if we just kind of were like, let's just, before we get in too deep, just like in relationships.
The natural chemistry shows. Yeah. I actually have a girlfriend who texts me like at the beginning of a relationship, she'll text me his chart info. And I have decided I'm not going to do it anymore because it's not actually okay.
No, because here's the thing. You're born the way you're born. Yes, there are certain things that fire and there's certain things that maybe you could think on paper wouldn't mesh well together. But there's other aspects to a human being. This isn't the end all be all. And just like I said, I'm born as this thing and my planet is in Jupiter or whatever. Like the thing, like the way I communicate, the fire, it all matters, but it's not the end all be all of how your relationship to the world is going to be. And you have the control over that. And there's other aspects like in love, love is love. Love is a feeling. Love is, it's this feeling that sometimes you can't say with words of like why you love that person or, oh, we like work really well in this way. Usually you don't pick a partner based on, we work through problems really well.
Right,
like that's not really like the way
it comes out later
and then you can sustain itself. You can appreciate that about your partner, but
that actually is really cool. I did a reading for a man and a woman who co-parent, and there were misunderstandings, we'll say, of how the other one operates. And when I took both of their charts together and I said, oh, actually, his process is more like this and your process is more like this. So if you can pull out of his process and just observe, like it ultimately starts to create more admiration and compassion. Because if I stop trying to influence someone to do it my way because it works for me, I mean, this is normal human stuff.
Sure.
But if we use this as a map to show like evidence, this person needs quiet time to process their emotions and they're going to come back to you after.
This is one of many tools.
Yeah.
To getting to know yourself, to this world of self-awareness. It's another form of self-care to just know who you are, what makes you tick, how you communicate, how you show up to the world, how people view you. All of that is just useful tools, like knowing my kids' signs makes me laugh. We all have jokes around the house about their signs. Kai's a Taurus and Leo's a Leo. And so, Kai's a Virgo. And so Kai needs things just so. And we laugh about that. And, takes him forever to do things because he has to make a decision. He's so cerebral and it's fun. It's fun to like, oh, Leo, like, of course you're on top of the table dancing. And it also, it doesn't make them want to outshine each other. They respect each other more.
Yeah.
Of course, Leo's the one that's working more and booking more jobs. Like people ask all the time, does that hurt Kai's feelings? I'm like, no. Kai loves his life. Kai's over there knitting away, like living his best life, like doing science journals. Like of course, Leo's a celebrated actor and model right now because he was born into that. He was born into it. And if he at any point doesn't want to do that anymore, we won't do it. But right now, it makes him light the fuck up because he is living his truth.
Yeah.
He is. My mother-in-law actually saw him in action a few times acting. And she couldn't believe it because he's relatively naughty. He's 6 years old. He runs around. He does whatever he wants to do whenever he wants to. And when he's on set, shines. You can tell he's living like in that moment, his dharma, you know, everyone loves him. He commands the room. He can listen really well. He wants to be his best self. He wants to be a good listener because he's doing what he wants to be doing and what he should be doing in this moment. And that can change at any moment. But for now, it's something that we celebrate because he's being himself and celebrate it for being himself. So it's so fascinating. And we use it as a tool. Like I know more about Adi because of his astrology, and it helps me have more respect for what he does for a living. Like he's a Libra. Of course he's, heavily in Libra because he's all about balance and justice, and he wants to help people. He wants to deeply help people, and it makes sense, and now it makes sense. I'm not resentful because this is his life's work. It's more like, I get it now. Like, of course this is his life's work. He doesn't have a choice. He was born into this mold of like, he's here to help people in a very profound way. And, and help people, like even just in the addiction world, he's bringing justice to the addiction world. Why is there only one way to heal if you're an addict? There shouldn't be. So now there isn't because of Adi's mark on this world, and it's just fascinating. And using these as tools. Yeah. So we've used up a lot of time. Yeah. I wanna briefly just kind of demystify the moon a little bit together and just kind of talk about very similarly, like how the moon affects us and why it's important to pay attention. Now that I think that's actually perfect because we've now talked about astrology and it's always, they're connected.
Yeah, so let's talk about just defining. So what we primarily have been talking about is natal chart astrology. So your personal, the moment that you were born, and that's personal to you. There's also mundane astrology, and that's actually what's going on in the sky right now. Right now, everything is in its perfect place, and it is in motion, so it's constantly changing. And there's not ever going to be a time where the combination is the exact same because every planet moves at its own rate. Now, the moon circles only the Earth, and so when we look at the moon, and it takes 28-ish days to go around the zodiac. What it will do over those 28 days is not stop, it never stops. If it stopped, we have really big things to talk about. But it passes through the same degree of each of the planets. And so I think it was Chani Nichols introduced the concept to me where she said, if you think of the moon as the town gossip, and it goes around the zodiac and it has a conversation with each of the planets along the way. And as it has a conversation with each of the planets along the way, you get this reflection because the moon doesn't have its own light. It only reflects the light of the sun or the light of the other planets. And so it's been so great this whole last year with Jupiter in Scorpio, it was really obvious if you know how to identify Jupiter in the sky when the moon was in Scorpio. And now it's in Sagittarius. So every time we see Jupiter in Sagittarius, we know that every time we see the moon close to Jupiter in the sky, we know the moon is in Sagittarius. Yeah. And it's having a conversation with Jupiter. Yeah. You can also learn to identify Mars. It's actually one of the easier ones because it's bright red. And are kind of orangey. And so when the moon is close to Mars, we're getting more of the Mars teachings. And so this is actually, I'm in the process of building a course on this exactly. So we can learn how to track not just the full moon and the new moon, although that is the best place to start, but that we can track where each of the planets are and how it affects us in that moment, because the moon will reflect the teachings of each planet as it goes through. And when we look at the new moon and the full moon, the new moon is the resetting of a cycle. So physically, from an astronomy perspective, the moon is sitting right between the sun and the earth. And so the side of the moon that is reflecting the sun is pointing away from the earth. So we only see the dark side of the moon. We don't see the lit up side. On the full moon, the moon is on the opposite side of the earth as the sun. So we see the full reflection of the sun's light in the moon, which creates an opposition. So the moon, let's say, we'll stick with Taurus since that's what we've been talking about. The moon's in Taurus. Well, the sun is in, and I'm blanking on the opposite, Scorpio. The sun is in Scorpio. And so there's the understanding of the polarity, which brings us into more wholeness.
That's crazy. I didn't realize that Scorpio and Taurus
Well, it's sensuality and sexuality.
Kaylee is Scorpio, and I'm a Taurus. I didn't even realize that they were opposites.
Oh yeah, they're opposites.
Interesting.
Yeah. And like Aries and Libra. So Aries is the individual. It's the first step of who am I? And Libra is the first step of who am I in relationship with another. Which really Libra, I've started to understand, is not just you in relationship, but who am I in relationship to myself when I'm in relationship with someone.
It's beautiful.
And so it's an integration of the wholeness through the full moon that kind of has a bit of a push-pull. Like, wait, it's about me. No, it's about we. No, it's about me. No, it's about we.
Yeah.
And it kind of pushes and pulls. But when we open ourselves to be able to experience both at the same time, that's when we integrate the teachings of the full moon. And so on the new moon, it's a resetting of the cycle. The moon goes dark. You can think of it like in the womb.
Yeah. In the womb, you go super introverted, take a bath, don't spend time doing a lot of outward things. I like being home all day in a new moon. I love just hanging around in my pajamas and just being lots of self-care, face mask, a good book, taking naps.
And they say the veil is the thinnest between worlds on the new moon.
On the new moon. So setting intentions, asking your angels for whatever it is you're needing, signs. Yes. Help with something.
Your intuitive work, your intuitive psychic work. That's when you do it. And that's why it's so important that you get quiet, because that stuff isn't loud.
Yeah, exactly.
That stuff is quiet.
Intuitive work is quiet. Yeah. If you want to kind of read any basic stuff on the new moon and the full moon, I share it on my blog. And I have an intuitive eating book, PDF.
Yes.
It's a very, very basic understanding, because to me, to get intuitive about eating, like, it is pretty basic. It's about your relationship with yourself. So there's some really easy practices there. So if you're looking for that, I'll put it in the show notes. It's on my website. It's $11 for just to get really clear about intuitive eating, which really is just intuition, with building that intuitive tool within yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the full moon and the new moon are also very feminine sides of the moon phase. I mean, the moon is feminine, let's face it, but
sun is more masculine.
However, there are more masculine phases of the moon as well. And so let's just break it into 4 general areas.
Yeah.
So the new moon is like 3 days leading up to the new moon itself, and 3 days leading there's afterwards.
Sure.
There's another, we can divide it into smaller pieces, but keep it simple. And so that's like about you, your self-care, all the stuff we've been talking about. And then after that, the next 7 days is the half moon. We see the half moon, and now it's more logistical. So it's planning. It's like, okay, so I made these intentions. My pie in the sky dream is to affect 1 million people with my work.
Yeah.
Now it's like, well, what am I going to do?
How am I going to get there?
I better start taking some steps to get there, because it's not magic. We have to do the work to create the life that we want to live. It's not like we're just taking handouts. The moon's like, here, let me sprinkle some moon dust on you. No.
You actually, what are you going to do?
Yeah, what are you going to do? And so after the new moon is done, give yourself a couple days just to steep in it like a good tea. You don't just dip the thing in right away and take it out. You leave it there for 3 to 5 minutes or whatever it is, you know? And then you get down to business. So it's like, okay, here's my plan. This is my daily routine. Maybe you revise it with the new moon, you know, as the new cycle comes around, depending on the sun season, I call it. And then start to perhaps book your meetings and your appointments and make a plan. And maybe then you're also continuing the self-care and saying, oh, I'm actually going to plan and book my acupuncture or, you know, the different things in there. And you make the plan, and then you start to put it into action, and you have your meetings and you do the things. And then before the full moon, 3 days leading up to it, and the full moon itself, and 3 days afterwards, this is now where you're bringing it out into the world.
Yep.
So I might say, this might be like during the full moon is a good time to, let's say in my world, announce a training or announce a retreat or something. You know, it's funny that I'm here talking about astrology, because it's only like the tiniest part of what I do. I do, you know, yoga nidra and yoga and retreats and all this stuff. I would announce it on a full moon because that's the time to shine into the world, and it's a time to be communicating.
And community.
And dancing and dinners and, you know.
Celebration
the
things you're creating, the things that you've manifested, manifested, celebrating where you're at right now in this moment after you've taken that whole cycle to create what you want to create.
Yeah. And then the other thing that I like to do on the full moon is I check in. Like, oh, wait, am I actually doing the things that's going to let me do what my intentions say on the full moon or on the new moon, pardon me? Like, if I put in the intention that I want to be sweeter with my partner, and on the full moon, I might check in like, oh, I did say I want to be sweeter with my partner. What have I actually done to be sweeter with my partner?
To step up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then after the full moon is, that phase of the full moon is done, we go back to another half moon, but this is going back to the dark moon or the new moon. And this now, it's completion. So you're starting to, it's not full completions, but it's like wrapping things up. It's
waning.
Yeah, exactly. And it's where you're, yeah, the completions are coming. You're enjoying the meal. You're not just cooking the meal, you're enjoying the meal. You know?
I love that.
Yeah, and having dessert and really appreciating and savoring what you've done. It's a really good time to give yourself a pat on the back and say, like, job well done. And again, this is more of a masculine phase because, I mean, who is famous? Like, how many people are really good at starting projects, but not so good at completing projects? And so it's vital if we're going to initiate something that we also have a completion phase. And this is where the completion phase comes in. And maybe you go into gratitude. I mean, that gratitude's great daily practice, but maybe this is a different kind of gratitude practice, like sending out little cards or, you know,
I like
who knows?
that. Yeah.
You know, so then it kind of closes it up a bit. And then by the time you're complete, so when the new moon comes back around again, you don't have these nagging things like, oh, should have done that, needed to do that. I can't believe I didn't finish that. And then if
you're clear, you're just clear, and you can be a vessel, and then you can start all over again. Like, now what do I want to pull into my life? What do I want to create? What seeds do I want to plant?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, I think it's important to recognize that when we plant a seed on a new moon, it's not necessary that it has to be completed in that lunar cycle. It can also be if the new moon is in Gemini now, well, that would be Gemini season. So then in 6 months, the full moon will be in Gemini.
Ah, yeah.
Right? So it's a half year.
So maybe a bigger goal.
6 months later.
Yeah.
Or it might take till the moon comes all the way back around to Gemini new moon again.
Yeah.
So it might be a 12-month cycle. Or if it's a really big pie in the sky, and you should have long-term goals. I mean, I don't mean to shit on you. It would be wonderful to have long-term goals.
Yeah.
It might be an 18-month cycle. And so we can look at these like 1 month, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months.
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of Adi and I's most magical plantings of seeds and manifestations that we've worked through, we're sitting down, pen and paper.
Yes.
What's our goal in 30 days? What's our goal in 3 months? What about 6 months, a year,
Absolutely.
5 years? And I mean, honestly, we checked almost all those boxes off because we set the tone and we did the fucking work.
And you came back to it again month after month. Like, how'd we do? How'd we do? Where are we at? Okay, now we need to adjust this.
That. Exactly.
Yeah. Same page. Yeah,
Same
exactly.
page. Well, this was amazing and the perfect kind of intro to all of these beautiful, mystical, you know, bodies. I'm so appreciative of just opening this door with you. I really appreciate you being here. And at the end of all of our podcasts, we ask 5 questions. I might get them out of order because I'm always getting them out of order. But the first one is, what is the best advice that you've ever received?
Oh, you know, I've heard this in so many different ways. And more recently, my teaching partner, Sasha Bahadur, who I run trainings and retreats with, she said, how can you better align with your naturalness? Your naturalness. And it's such a beautiful way to think about, like, stop trying so hard. You know, it's what's your naturalness? What's your natural way of being? And I think the biggest growth I've ever experienced in my life was, you know, every time I inched closer to, or I surrendered more to my naturalness. Although that language is totally new to me, it sits so deeply within every cell, you know?
I think if we could all just ask ourselves that once in a while, it would be a better world.
Yeah.
Stop pretending, stop trying so hard for ourselves.
Yeah.
Just for ourselves. What a release.
Yeah.
What am I in my most stripped away natural?
Yeah. And we can try and put a puzzle in the same spot a million times. If it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. Yeah. And so just do you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's been your proudest moment?
My proudest moment?
The first thing that comes to mind, because obviously one would hope you have more than one proud moment.
Yeah. I mean, motherhood. Yeah. How can you? There's nothing more. There's really.
I feel like 99.9% of all moms I've had on here, that's what they say. I mean, how can you?
Yeah. No, and specifically as a mother, that first time I laid down the boundary and didn't budge and he got it. And then reinforced the next time I enforced the boundary and he still got it.
Wow.
That was definitely
winning. Hashtag winning.
Yeah. Like a 2-year-old throwing a temper tantrum and having to really hold your own. It sounds crazy, but it is some of the greatest work that has to happen. It has to happen.
So fulfilling. You're like, right. Got it.
Well, and long-term.
That's why I'm here for that person.
Yeah, exactly.
This
long-term behavior and how to navigate the world, you miss that, you screw them up for life.
That's
right? It's so vital.
Yeah,
yeah,
missed
that was
that absent that day.
I mean, he's 4. He just turned 4, so there'll be more, but that was a really big one.
He's the sweetest. And then on the flip side, what has been your hardest moment?
My hardest moment, I went through a friend breakup 3 years ago, and it was harder than almost 4 years ago now. It was harder than any breakup, love breakup.
I feel that.
It really threw me into a process of self-questioning that I don't think I could have. It was dark. I went dark. I went really dark. Really dark.
I've been there.
Recently
for the past 2 months, and it's so intense.
It's so
dark.
intense.
I woke up a couple times and I was like, I'm depressed. I told Adi, I am so depressed right now.
It's just so heavy.
The
self-questioning for me was such a big part. And then why, in my friend breakup situation, she wouldn't talk about what we disagreed upon. And why won't she talk about it?
Why am I not worthy of this conversation?
Yes.
Same.
Don't you love me? Why are you rejecting me?
How can
so
you just
hard
walk
right
away
now?
like that?
Yes,
I know.
It's different.
That's
It's
same.
so different.
I'm that same in your relationship.
Damn.
Same. It's so intense. It's so hard.
So hard.
It's so hard. And also, I commend you and honor you. It's also so big.
It's so huge.
Just like in parenting, one of those moments where it's I have the self-respect to walk away from relationships that don't serve me. That doesn't mean it has to be forever. I've had lots of friend breakups and we get back together as new, better human beings.
Well, and that's where we are right now. And actually, the conversation started again. It's really sweet. We love each other.
Of course. It's not about love.
Yes.
She kept saying from her side, this is conditional love. I'm like, this is not conditional love. This is, I love you.
Yeah.
I can't watch you hurt yourself again. I can't be in this relationship with you if that person is, and that's love. I love you so much I can't see you hurt.
Yeah. Ours was totally different. It was a completely different thing. And as it's come back around naturally, I actually was in order for me to actually trust you, we need to have the conversation that wasn't had.
We got to go there.
Yeah. And we're not there yet, but we're making plans to actually go in, because we also both recognize that that's going to be an emotional experience that's going to need some time.
Yeah.
And we're both moms now. Yeah. I mean, she wasn't. And I think it's been one of my greatest teachings, and she's been one of my greatest teachers because of this. Yeah. Yeah. Oof.
Damn, girl. I feel that.
Choo.
Well, any self-care rituals that you just stick by on a day-to-day basis? Something that, or maybe not even day-to-day, just a self-care ritual that you live by?
I definitely need to work on this constantly. It's interesting because the things that generally get put out as self-care, like daily meditation, or in my case, I do daily yoga nidra, and I meditate. I used to be a daily meditator, and now with yoga nidra, I switch between the two, and definitely do one, if not both, every day. I don't experience them as self-care in some romantic kind of way, you know?
It's like your mind.
It's work. It's my work. It's my work. It's my sanity. And so, yes. And also, I don't even think of it as self-care at this point because it's just so integral to who I am and my operating system. But more recently, the biggest self-care practice has been redefining boundaries and re-educating people on what it means to be in relationship with me. Because as a teacher, you know, when I first started running teacher trainings, yoga teacher trainings, there were less people. So if somebody needed my attention outside of class, it was super easy. Let's go for a tea, jump on a call. You can text me for a few hours, whatever. I'll be there for you. Where now the accumulation of 10 years of running yoga teacher trainings, not everybody's in touch, but there are way more people in touch that desire my attention. And now I'm a mother.
Yeah.
You know, and motherhood and I'm a wife,
Yep.
you know, and like,
boundaries become a whole new thing.
Husband, wife does not work if you're not putting the time in. Like you have to be committed to
Being
each
present.
other and a friendship and like intimacy. And so I don't have the same free time. And so, yeah, my boundaries just really feed into my relationship with time, which is one of my greatest weaknesses. Is my relationship to time. And so boundaries, the whole re-education. And it's this is also really hard.
It's really hard.
It's really hard.
I hate it. And I hate it. And I also know that I need it. And
I love it now.
I mean,
just because it's hard doesn't mean that I don't love it.
Sure.
Yeah.
There are parts of me that are always like, if I didn't, like this friend breakup, for example, if I didn't have children, I wouldn't give a fuck. I'd be like, it's fine. Like, this relationship's fun enough. Like, it gives me things. Like, it's fine. But I have such self-respect. And for my children, it takes it up a whole new level.
Yeah, motherhood changes everything.
It changes everything. And so therefore, my boundaries are way stronger. Like during my pregnancy, even this pregnancy, I had so many friend breakups, and even my own sister, I was like, I need a break from this. And for 9 months, we didn't talk because I was so sensitive to what I needed. And what I needed was really healthy, positive relationships in my life that made me feel really good after leaving that person every single time. And that's hard. And that means I had to kind of cut out a lot, but it's what I needed. And so I say I hate it in that, like, I hate having to be the person to be the grown-up over and over again. Like, I don't know why I always have to be the grown-up. Like, why do I have to be the one that's like, this is great for us, this is better for us. Like, let's have that conversation. Let's go there. Let's have this, whatever it is. And it's like, it's exhausting, but it's also who I am. And being true to that and honoring that. So I love it in that and being true to who I am, but I hate it in that it's hard. And it's hard, and it's hard, and it's hard, and it's hard.
One of the things that I've really noticed is that, because for me, the boundaries are a lot more in my professional life. I don't have a huge social life.
Yeah.
Don't have a huge social life. It's quite small.
Yeah.
But in my professional life, and what the feedback that I'm getting is, a little bit of a pushback of like, when you set a boundary, there's a pushback always, inevitably. And so every different one is different. But what the feedback that comes in later is you're actually teaching me how to set boundaries.
Of course.
And by prioritizing my family, like your email is going to come 2 days later because Freddie's homesick or I'm with this or, I've got to, my home is my priority. It doesn't mean I'm not professional. It means that we need to really break out of this instant world that we live in because it's unhealthy and unsustainable.
I pre-apologize, but I will not answer your email today or tomorrow, and it might be next week.
I just have an out of office that says, I'll get to it sometime. I'm working on a creative project, which is like, I am working on a creative project, but also it's my son.
Yeah.
My creative project is my child.
My starred inbox section, my assistant even helped me with it. We cannot get it to zero. It will not get to zero. I will not get, and that's okay.
It's got to be okay.
That's okay because I have thriving, beautiful, loving children that know their mom loves them. And
it's the part of the world that we need to really tend to. That's the garden that we need to tend to. Yeah.
Final question.
Okay.
This podcast is called Ignited. What ignites you?
Well, really simply teaching and sharing. I notice the quality of my presence while I'm in the room teaching, whether it's a retreat or a training, that's when I'm the most present, and I get the most excited. I'm the most passionate. And what it is specifically is in the Yoga Nidra trainings that I run, we are going so deep into the psyche and the heart of humans that I get to walk people so deep within themselves that they meet the part of themselves that is just pure love. And when somebody meets that part of themselves and they know that they are at the foundation, at the root, at the core of who they are is love, their life changes. And I mean, that might sound woo-woo, and there's a lot that goes into it, and it's not always comfortable, and sometimes it's incredibly confronting. But when you meet yourself, like I've wanted to call all my work coming home, like the journey home to yourself.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if I'll ever actually use it, but when I see somebody really come home to themselves, that is what it is. That's my purpose. That's why I'm here, is to bring as many people home as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you can get that in so many different ways, but that's so beautiful that you're sharing that with the world. I know one of my best friends, Rochelle, you know Rochelle, she, at the end of every yoga practice, or at least the classes that I go to, she always says, welcome home. Like after Shavasana, just like
So nice.
You're in Shavasana and she's like, welcome home. And it's like you know, and that's
it. When the world goes away, your senses turn in, you're just right there with yourself. You feel the subtle essence of your being. That is home. Yeah.
And it's always with you. It's
always
right there.
We get so pulled out of it, and just how many times.
And you can tap in. I mean, I was really suffering in my pregnancy and just having a lot of trouble. I was really sick, and I reached out to you and said, I need Yoga Nidra. I need it. And you sent it to me. And I still sometimes when I need to go to sleep and take a nap and I know I'm just deeply exhausted, but I can't get there, I'll put that on. And I know you're not supposed to go to sleep on it, but I do.
Okay.
It's the gateway. It's like what takes me there, and I need that deep relaxation. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
And we're excited for your course. We'll share about it when it's live. And I love you, and I can't wait to have you back. We're gonna go deep with Adi, have you back, and talk about Yoga Nidra.
Amazing.
So I can't wait.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Ignited podcast. We were so happy to have you along for this ride. Please go and subscribe to this. Leave us a review. We love hearing from you. And if you want more, don't forget to go to ignited.com, where all the podcast episodes are available with show notes and so many of the little details and links from each one of these interviews. And you can look at all the future events that we have going on, all the things that make Ignited so special, even beyond this recording. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next week.